He found me on a dark web forum, and it's real. It's 3 a.m. and I'm staring at a flickering screen. The only light in my cramped apartment comes from my laptop, painting faint blue shadows on the walls. The rest of the world feels dead, silent and unmoving, as though the night itself is holding its breath. My phone buzzes beside me, vibrating slightly against the wooden desk. A notification lights up the screen. I see you. I freeze. For a moment, I don't breathe. The message is anonymous, with no profile picture and no identifiable username. It feels like a prank, one of those automated scare-bot messages that occasionally pop up on sketchy websites. But something feels off about this one. Something personal. To understand how I ended up here, staring at those 3 words with cold sweat gathering on the back of my neck, I need to go back a few hours. My name is Alex. I'm in my mid-20s, I work tech support from home, and I'm a chronic night owl. Most of my days blur into one another, and when you spend hours staring at multiple monitors troubleshooting customer issues, your brain starts craving something different, something exciting. That's how I found myself drifting deeper into the corners of the internet. I wasn't looking for anything specific that night, just clicking through forums and links, watching random live streams, reading conspiracy threads. But eventually, curiosity brought me somewhere new. A forum called The Backroom. Its homepage was simple, just white text against a pitch-black background, flickering occasionally as though the website was unstable. The banner across the top read, "For those who see what others ignore." There were threads upon threads, each with cryptic titles like "Do not answer the third knock" and "Coordinates for the brave." Most of the posts were nonsense. Fragments of text, images that refused to load, and symbols I couldn't recognize. But the deeper I went, the more I realized there was an underlying structure to the chaos, patterns hidden beneath the noise. I wasn't entirely reckless. I kept my VPN active, my Tor browser secure, and my real information locked down. I'd read enough horror stories about people getting doxxed or stalked because they got too comfortable browsing places like this. But despite all my precautions, something about the backroom felt different. After scrolling for nearly an hour, I stumbled across a thread titled, "New Faces Always Stand Out." There was only one reply in the thread from a user named 0x Reaper. Their message was short but chilling. "Welcome, Alex." I stared at the screen, every hair on my arm standing on end. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't typed my name or created an account. I hadn't even interacted with anyone on the forum. Yet here it was, my name typed out like it was plucked straight from my mind. I told myself it had to be a trick, some kind of browser exploit or code pulling data from somewhere I'd overlooked. But I couldn't shake the unease curling in my gut. I closed the forum tab and leaned back in my chair, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a coincidence, maybe a prank. But then my phone buzzed with that message. "I see you." The timing was too perfect, too deliberate. My laptop screen flickered, and I noticed a notification pop up on my browser window, another message on The Backroom. It was from 0x Reaper. For a moment, I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the tab. My entire body felt tense, as if my muscles were bracing for something. I shouldn't have clicked it. I should have shut everything down, turned off my router, and gone to bed. But curiosity is a stubborn thing, and the fear of not knowing can be even worse than the fear of danger itself. The thread had updated. There was a new message waiting for me. It wasn't text this time, it was an image attachment. I clicked it, my heartbeat loud in my ears as the file loaded. It was a photo of my apartment building, taken from across the street. The angle was unmistakable, the faint glow of my window light shining against the dark. It wasn't an old photo, it was now. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. Someone was watching me, right now, from somewhere nearby. I froze in place, my breathing shallow as I scanned the darkened corners of my room, then the window overlooking the street below. But I couldn't see anyone. The street lamp flickered, casting eerie orange shadows across the pavement. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at that image. My cursor hovered over the browser close button, then back to the message thread. My mind raced through scenarios. Was this just some sick joke? Was it a hacker showing off? Or was something out there in the night staring up at my window right now? A new message appeared beneath the photo. It simply read, "Don't look away. I'm talking to you." That was the moment I realized I'd gone too far, that my casual curiosity about the dark web had cracked open a door I wasn't supposed to touch, and now, whoever was on the other side wasn't going to let me close it. Audience interaction prompt. Would you keep chatting or close your laptop and never look back? I had a choice to make. But either way, I had a feeling it was already too late. He found me on a dark web forum, and it's real. I couldn't stop staring at the image of my apartment building. The glow of my window in the photo was unmistakable. It was recent, fresh, and intentional. Someone was out there watching me, and they wanted me to know it. But instead of shutting everything down and walking away, I clicked back to the back room. The forum felt different now. What once felt like an abstract digital curiosity had become something sharp and real. My screen flickered as I scrolled through thread titles: "Knock twice and wait," "Skin markets," "Coordinates for the brave." Each title carried an unsettling weight, as if they weren't just threads but invitations. The users on the forum weren't normal either. Their usernames were strings of numbers, symbols, and fragmented words, like VoidCaller93 or Question the Door ? Their posts were even worse. Grainy images of shadowed figures in empty rooms, strings of gibberish text interrupted by coordinates and one-liners like, "He's already inside," or "You shouldn't have answered." There was no humor here, no light-hearted banter or memes, just an endless void of darkness and paranoia. I started clicking deeper into the threads, each one adding a new weight to my chest. I saw screenshots of text conversations that ended mid-sentence, like the person on the other end had been interrupted. I saw links labeled "Do not click" and threads filled with panicked users begging others for advice. "Someone's at my door. What do I do? Please, someone reply." And then, amid all the noise, I saw another message from 0x Reaper. It wasn't in a thread this time. It was in my private messages. The text was short. "Still with me, Alex?" My stomach knotted itself into a fist. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the reply box. I knew I shouldn't respond. I knew. But my hands moved on their own, typing out a simple message. "Who are you? What do you want?" Seconds passed. My screen stayed still, no reply. But just as I started to think maybe the stranger had logged off, a reply popped up. "You don't recognize me? We've talked before in a way. I've seen you at your desk. Blue hoodie, hair a mess, chewing on the end of a pen when you're thinking too hard." My blood turned to ice. I was wearing a blue hoodie. My hair was a mess. And yeah, I had been chewing on the end of a pen earlier tonight. I pushed back from my desk, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. My eyes darted to the window. The curtains were drawn, but it didn't matter. Whoever this was, whatever this was, they could see me. I typed back, my fingers shaking. "How do you know that?" This time the reply came almost instantly. "You leave breadcrumbs, Alex. You'd be amazed at what people can find if they're willing to dig deep enough. Your city, your job, your favorite takeout spot on Fridays. Nothing's really hidden, is it?" I felt like I was being suffocated. My chest was tight, and the silence of my apartment felt deafening. The worst part was how casual the message sounded. Like this wasn't someone making a threat, it was just stating a fact. I wanted to shut everything down. I wanted to close my laptop, unplug it, throw my phone into the river, and move to another state. But instead, I sat there, frozen. My body was paralyzed between the fight or flight instinct. Another message appeared. "You're fun to talk to, Alex, but don't get too comfortable. You'll regret talking to me." And then, nothing. The chat window went silent. The words, "You'll regret talking to me," repeated in my head like a broken record. What did that mean? Was it a threat, a warning, or something else entirely? I closed my laptop and sat back, hands pressed to my face. My mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts. Who was Zero X Reaper? Were they outside my apartment right now? Were they even real, or was this some elaborate prank or social experiment? I told myself to shut it down, to reset my router, run every antivirus program I had, and scrub my system clean. But instead I sat there, staring at the closed laptop as if it held answers I couldn't walk away from. Curiosity is a poison. It sinks into your bloodstream and clouds your judgment, makes you do things you know are wrong. I could hear the voice in my head saying, "Don't go back, don't reply, don't open that laptop again." But the silence was unbearable. The unanswered questions felt like an itch I couldn't scratch. So after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I flipped the laptop open again. The forum was still there, waiting for me like an open doorway into something I couldn't quite see yet. I refreshed the chat window. No new messages. But there was something else, a new thread pinned to the top of the forum. It was titled, "Alex, pick up." My pulse hammered in my ears as I clicked it. The thread had no text, no images, just a single audio file labeled playme.mp3. I hovered over the play button. I knew that whatever was on that file was going to be something I couldn't unhear, something that would make this all infinitely worse. But I clicked it anyway. And when the sound began to play, I felt my stomach drop into an endless pit. The audio file played softly through my headphones, a faint, distorted sound of breathing, slow, deliberate breaths, crackling as though filtered through an old microphone. There were no words, no other noises, just breathing. And at the very end, barely audible, I heard a faint whisper, "See you soon, Alex." I yanked off my headphones and slammed the laptop shut. My heart was pounding, my skin cold with sweat. I checked my phone, nothing. I checked my window, still drawn shut. But every shadow in my room felt alive. Every creak of the floorboards a sign that someone was just there waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my couch, clutching my phone and staring at the locked door across the room. Every time a car passed outside, its headlights slicing through the blinds, I held my breath. The next morning, I told myself I'd had enough. I deleted Tor, scrubbed my browser history and reset my VPN settings. I even considered throwing the entire laptop out. But deep down, I knew it was too late. Whatever door I'd opened on the back room, it couldn't be closed so easily. And I was right, the messages started coming through my email next. Anonymous sender, no subject line. The first one just said, "Nice haircut." I froze when I read it. I had just gotten a haircut 2 days ago. The email was followed by another, "Blue hoodie again today. You really like that one, don't you?" The hoodie. I was wearing it again. The next few days were a blur of mounting paranoia. The emails kept coming. Some were simple, like updates on what I was wearing or what time I left my apartment. Others included links, videos hosted on untraceable URLs. The first link I clicked led to a grainy video feed of an empty alleyway, illuminated by a flickering street lamp. I didn't recognize the location, but something about it felt wrong, like someone was just off camera, watching. Another link showed static for several seconds before cutting to a close-up shot of my building's entrance. My front door was just barely visible in the background. Every nerve in my body was on edge. I started keeping my blinds drawn, my phone's camera taped over, and my laptop closed whenever I wasn't using it. But despite everything, the feeling of being watched never went away. It wasn't just online anymore. One night, as I was coming home from grabbing groceries, I noticed a car parked across the street. Its headlights were off, and the driver was just barely visible through the tinted glass, a faint silhouette sitting perfectly still. I stood frozen on the sidewalk for what felt like an eternity, clutching my grocery bag in one hand and my keys in the other. The figure didn't move. I walked quickly to my building, glancing over my shoulder every few steps. The car didn't follow me, but when I reached my apartment window, I could still see it sitting there, watching. A few days later, while walking back from the convenience store near my place, I caught a glimpse of someone standing at the edge of an alleyway, a hooded figure, half hidden in the shadows, just staring. I froze mid-step, my breath caught in my throat, but when I blinked, they were gone. Sleep became impossible. Every sound, the hum of my refrigerator, the creak of the wooden floor, became evidence of someone sneaking inside. My phone stayed on silent, notifications piling up from anonymous emails and burner numbers. The messages became less cryptic and more intimate. "You look tired. Long night? You shouldn't leave your window unlocked, Alex." I checked the window immediately after reading that one, and sure enough, the latch wasn't fully secured. I swore I had locked it the night before. I stopped leaving my apartment unless I absolutely had to. I skipped work, cancelled plans, and avoided phone calls. I spent hours digging through the back room trying to find anything that could tell me who Zero X Reaper was. But the forum was endless, a labyrinth of nonsense threads and dead links. I started seeing their username everywhere, commenting on random threads, lurking in conversations. It felt like they were following me through the digital corridors of that cursed website. And then, one night, I found it. Pinned at the top of the forum was a new thread. Knock, knock. My stomach sank as I clicked it. The thread had no text, just an image. It was my apartment door. Not just any apartment door. My door. The chipped paint on the handle, the crooked peephole. I recognized every detail. The photo was taken up close, as though someone had been standing just inches away. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, and my vision blurred as my body screamed at me to move, to run, to do something. I stumbled over to the peephole and looked out. The hallway was empty, just flickering fluorescent lights and silence. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear anything. Footsteps, breathing, something, nothing. I sat on the floor staring at the door, heart hammering in my chest. I stayed like that for hours, maybe longer, until sunlight began to seep in through the cracks of my blinds. But that image, that cursed image, stayed burned into my mind. Someone had been there, right outside my door, watching, waiting. At that point, it wasn't about figuring out who Zero X Reaper was anymore. It wasn't about being curious or clever. It was about surviving. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Audience interaction prompt. What would you do if someone online knew where you lived? By the time morning came, I was a mess. Bloodshot eyes, jittery hands, and a mind stretched so thin it felt like it might snap. I hadn't slept in days, and every shadow in my apartment felt like it was alive, creeping closer. That photo of my door haunted me. I couldn't shake the image from my mind. The thought of someone standing right outside, close enough to hear me breathe, close enough to... I had to get out. I threw a few clothes into a backpack, grabbed my laptop, and left. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I just left. My friend Sam lived across town in a cluttered but cozy apartment. We'd known each other since college, and if there was anyone I could trust, it was him. I called him on the way over, voice trembling as I tried to explain without sounding completely unhinged. When I arrived, Sam opened the door and froze. I must have looked awful, pale, gaunt, eyes darting toward every shadow behind him. He let me in without asking questions. The moment I stepped into his living room, I felt a brief flicker of safety. The walls here felt solid. The windows had curtains drawn tight. Sam handed me a cup of coffee and sat across from me, brow furrowed as I spilled everything. The messages, the photos, the figure in the alley, the car outside my building. He listened without interrupting, his face growing paler with every detail. When I finished, there was a long silence. Finally, he said, "Alex, this isn't just some troll messing with you. This is something else. You need to go to the police." I shook my head immediately. "And tell them what, Sam?" "That someone on a dark web forum is sending me creepy photos and emails. That I think someone's following me, but I can't prove it. They'll just tell me to log off and get some sleep." He didn't argue, but I could see the unease in his eyes. I spent the rest of the day in Sam's apartment, curtains closed, every light on. He let me use his laptop, and against my better judgment, I logged back into the back room. I needed answers. The messages were still there, waiting for me. 0x Reaper had been busy. The latest one caught my attention. It wasn't just a string of threats or cryptic lines. It was a series of numbers. Coordinates, I realized, followed by a timestamp, 3 a.m. I copied the coordinates into an online map tool. The location appeared on the screen, a pin dropped at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Sam leaned over my shoulder, his face illuminated by the laptop screen. "Alex, don't even think about it. This feels like a trap." He was right. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to go, but at the same time the coordinates felt like a thread, a chance to pull back the curtain, to understand. The clock ticked closer to midnight. Sam tried to convince me to stay, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I ignored this, it wouldn't end. The messages, the photos, they'd keep coming. They'd follow me no matter where I ran, so I made a choice. I told Sam to stay put and call the police if I didn't come back by dawn. Then I grabbed my backpack, borrowed his car, and drove into the night. The warehouse loomed in the distance, an enormous skeleton of rusted metal and shattered windows. Its structure clawed at the night sky, surrounded by empty lots and broken chain-link fences. The coordinates had led me here with chilling precision. I parked the car a good distance away and killed the engine. My breath fogged up the windshield as I sat there, staring at the building. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn around, to drive away, and forget I'd ever seen this place. But I couldn't. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes. The air was icy, sharp in my lungs. The only sound was the faint whistling of wind through the cracked walls of the warehouse. The front entrance was chained shut, but a side door hung ajar, barely wide enough for someone to slip through. I took a deep breath, swallowed the lump in my throat, and stepped inside. The inside of the warehouse was worse than I'd imagined. Rows of rusted machinery, scattered debris, and graffiti-covered walls. Moonlight filtered in through broken skylights, casting jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Somewhere deep inside, I heard a faint sound, a metallic clink, like something being dragged. I moved carefully, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Every corner felt alive, every shadow hiding someone or something waiting just out of sight. Then I saw it. At the far end of the warehouse, illuminated by a single hanging light bulb, was a chair. On the chair sat an old laptop, its screen glowing faintly in the darkness. I walked toward it, each step heavier than the last. The screen displayed a familiar interface. The back room. There was one open message. It read, "Welcome, Alex. You made it." My hands were trembling as I stared at the screen. I could feel someone watching me, eyes drilling into my back from somewhere in the shadows. Another message appeared. "Look up." I froze. Every part of me wanted to turn and run, but I couldn't stop myself. I looked up. Perched on a metal catwalk above me was a figure. Cloaked in shadow, their face obscured by the darkness, they stood perfectly still, looking down at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The figure raised one hand and pointed, not at me, but behind me. Slowly, I turned around. Behind me, spray painted across the concrete floor in jagged white letters, were the words, "You shouldn't be here." A loud metallic crash echoed through the warehouse, and the single hanging light bulb flickered and went out. Panic surged through me, and I ran. I sprinted back the way I came, crashing into debris and stumbling over broken glass. I could hear footsteps behind me, rapid, heavy, closing the distance. I burst through the side door into the freezing night air and didn't stop running until I reached the car. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and started the engine with shaking hands. The warehouse loomed behind me, its broken windows glinting faintly in the moonlight. I didn't look back. I didn't stop driving until I was back at Sam's apartment, the sun creeping over the horizon, painting the sky in dull shades of grey. I don't remember driving back to the warehouse. I don't remember making the decision to return at all. All I know is that after hours of staring at Sam's ceiling, the faint glow of my laptop screen casting shadows on the walls, something inside me snapped. Fear had been replaced by something else, something darker, desperation, anger, curiosity that felt like an infection spreading through my mind. The warehouse wasn't done with me, and I wasn't done with it. It was nearly midnight when I arrived again, the same skeletal silhouette of twisted steel looming against the night sky. This time I parked closer, headlights off, engine still running, just in case. The side door was still ajar, creaking softly in the wind. I squeezed through, flashlight in hand, and stepped back into the void. The air was colder this time, stale. The silence wasn't comforting, it was oppressive. Every sound, my footsteps on the gritty concrete, the faint dripping of water from somewhere far off, felt magnified. My flashlight swept across the cavernous space. Abandoned machinery sat like rusted carcasses in the dark. Graffiti bled across the walls like silent screams, and above me, faint red dots glimmered. Cameras. They were watching me. I realized then I was being broadcasted. Somewhere, someone, or many people, were watching me stumble through this place. The thought made me sick. I pressed forward, deeper into the darkness, my flashlight beam slicing through the shadows. Every now and then I thought I heard something, a faint whisper, a soft shuffle. But when I turned, there was nothing. Eventually, I reached a clearing in the center of the warehouse, a wide open space surrounded by rusted scaffolding and piles of debris. In the middle, illuminated by a single hanging bulb, was something new. A chair. And tied to the chair was a mannequin, its head tilted slightly to one side. Its face was covered with a paper mask, a crudely drawn smiley face scrawled in black marker. Around its neck hung a tablet screen, flickering to life as I approached. Text began to scroll across the screen. "Welcome back, Alex." I swallowed hard, my breath fogging up in the cold air. More text appeared. "Curiosity is a dangerous thing, isn't it? You just couldn't let this go, couldn't leave well enough alone." I spun around, flashlight sweeping across the darkness, searching for anyone, anything that might explain what was happening. But I was alone, or at least it looked that way. The screen flickered again, and a new message appeared. "Look up." My stomach dropped. Above me, on the scaffolding, faint shapes shifted in the darkness. Silhouettes. People, at least 5 or 6 of them, standing completely still, just watching. And then a voice crackled to life over an unseen speaker system. It was distorted, metallic, dripping with mockery. "You wanted to meet me, Alex? Well, here I am." I couldn't pinpoint where the voice was coming from. It seemed to echo from every direction, bouncing off the metal beams and concrete walls. "Who are you?" I shouted into the void, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The voice chuckled, low, hollow, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Oh, Alex, you still don't understand, do you? You're not special, you're not unique, you're just content." The mannequins, the cameras, the voices. My mind reeled as the pieces started to click into place. This was a show, an event. Somewhere out there, across the dark web, people were watching me, rooting for me, betting on me. I was entertainment. The voice continued, cruel and amused. "Every mouse eventually finds the cheese, Alex. But the trap always closes." The light above the mannequin flickered and went out, plunging the space into darkness. And then, chaos erupted. From somewhere in the shadows, footsteps thundered toward me, multiple sets, boots pounding against metal and gravel. I turned and ran, flashlights swinging wildly as I stumbled over debris. My breaths were sharp and ragged, my lungs screaming for air. They were chasing me. I could hear them. Voices murmuring, laughter echoing, boots striking metal. I turned a corner and ducked behind an old shipping crate, pressing my back against the cold metal. My flashlight was off now, the only light coming from faint moonbeams slicing through broken windows. The voices came closer. "Where are you, Alex? Don't hide now. You came all this way." I held my breath, squeezing my eyes shut, praying they'd move past me. But then, a metallic clink. Something small rolled to a stop just in front of me. A flashlight. It clicked on, blinding me with harsh white light. They'd found me. I bolted again, heart slamming against my ribs as I sprinted through the labyrinthine maze of rusted equipment and crumbling walls. I could hear them behind me, their voices growing louder, their steps closing in. I spotted a faint glow ahead, a break in the darkness. An exit? A window? I didn't care. I ran toward it with everything I had. The footsteps behind me grew louder, closer. As I burst through the exit, a broken doorway framed by jagged metal, I felt something sharp graze my shoulder. A hand, a weapon. I didn't stop to find out. I stumbled into the cold night air, my lungs burning, my legs shaking. Behind me, the warehouse sat like a black void against the night sky, silent once again. I didn't stop running until I reached the car. I fumbled with the keys, hands trembling so badly I dropped them twice before finally getting the door open. I slammed it shut, locked it, and started the engine. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The silhouettes were still there, standing in the warehouse doorway, watching me leave. But there was something else, a single red light blinking faintly in the darkness. A camera, still recording. They let me go, not because I escaped, not because I was clever or lucky, but because it was part of the script. I was content, a story for someone to watch in the darkness of their own room, on their own flickering screens. I didn't stop driving until the sun was rising, bleeding dull orange across the horizon. But even now, even here, I can't shake the feeling that I'm still being watched. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the backroom never lets you go. Would you have gone to that warehouse, or stayed hidden? I didn't go home after that night. I couldn't. Instead, I checked into a cheap roadside motel a few towns over. The kind with peeling wallpaper, flickering neon signs, and a manager who didn't ask questions. I paid in cash, disconnected from the internet, and kept my phone powered off. For the first time in what felt like weeks, I slept. It wasn't peaceful, it was fractured, plagued by flashes of shadows and distorted voices, but it was sleep. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight bleeding through the thin curtains, reality came crashing back. My phone was still off. My laptop was buried at the bottom of my backpack. But it didn't matter. I knew this wasn't over. The feeling of being watched had seeped into my bones, into every corner of my mind. Every car parked nearby felt suspicious. Every person in the motel lobby felt like they were looking at me. Even when I was alone, I couldn't shake the feeling of invisible eyes tracing my every move. I thought about going to the police, I really did. But how do you explain something like this? How do you tell a police officer that someone on a dark web forum was watching you, tracking you, manipulating you? How do you tell them about shadowy figures in warehouses, surveillance cameras, and distorted voices speaking through speakers in the dark? Still, I tried. I walked into the nearest police station with trembling hands and sleep-deprived eyes. I told them everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the parts that made me sound truly insane. The officer taking my statement listened politely, his pen scratching against paper as he took notes. But the longer I spoke, the more his expression shifted, from concern to skepticism to something worse. Pity. When I finished, he closed his notepad, sighed, and said, "Look, son, this sounds like you've had a pretty bad scare. Maybe you've been spending too much time online. These people, they get into your head. My advice? Log off, get some sleep, and stay away from those websites." That was it. That was all he had to offer me. No investigation, no follow-up, nothing. I walked out of that police station feeling smaller than I ever had before, alone, helpless. But the thing about Zero X Reaper, the thing about the back room, is that they don't just stop. The emails started again. At first, they were subtle, an empty inbox notification from an unfamiliar sender, a blank message with no subject line. But then they escalated. One email simply read, "We're still watching, Alex." Another included an attachment. Against every rational thought in my head, I clicked it. It was a photo. My motel room door, taken from the parking lot below. I slammed my laptop shut, heart racing, bile rising in my throat. They'd found me again. It didn't matter how far I ran, how much I hid. They were always one step ahead. The next morning, there was a package waiting for me at the motel's front desk. No return address, no postage stamps, just my name scrawled in black marker. Inside the box was a single object, my blue hoodie neatly folded, the same one I'd been wearing that night in the warehouse. I didn't understand. How did they have this? How had they gotten so close without me noticing? But the real question wasn't how, it was why. Were they taunting me, playing with me, or was this just part of the show? Was someone, somewhere, watching my reaction right now? I packed my things and left the motel that same hour. For the next few weeks, I drifted. Different motels, different towns. I stayed offline completely, using burner phones and paying for everything in cash. But the feeling never left me. The feeling of eyes. Eventually, I went home. Not because I felt safe, but because I was exhausted. I couldn't keep running. My apartment felt alien, like someone else had been living there while I was gone. I checked every corner, every cabinet, every shadow. Nothing. But later that night, when I finally powered on my laptop, there was one final message waiting for me. From Zero X Reaper. It wasn't an email. It wasn't on the back room. It was just there. A text document sitting on my desktop. I clicked it open. It said, "We're not done yet." That was it. Just those 4 words. I deleted the file. I powered off my laptop, and I haven't turned it back on since. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. I know they're still out there, watching, waiting. And if there's one thing I need you to understand, it's this. The internet isn't just cat videos and funny memes. There are places, dark places, where the line between reality and nightmare gets blurred. The dark web isn't just some spooky story. It's real. And once you step into those shadows, sometimes you don't come back. Maybe you're thinking, I'd never fall for something like this. I'd never get involved. But that's the trick. It doesn't start with something big. It starts with curiosity. A single click, a single message. And before you know it, you're staring into a camera lens you didn't know existed, listening to a voice you'll never forget, and wondering if the person watching you is smiling as you fall apart. If you've ever had a strange encounter online, share it in the comments and you're not alone. I don't go on forums anymore. I don't browse strange links, and I sure as hell don't let curiosity guide me down digital hallways I can't escape from. My laptop sits powered off most days, tucked in a corner like a loaded gun I'm too afraid to touch. But despite all of that, despite the months that have passed, I can't shake the feeling that he's still there. Watching. Waiting. I've tried to rebuild my life. New laptop. New phone. New apartment in a building with thick walls and doors that actually lock. I even swapped out my daily routine. But paranoia doesn't care about locks or routines. It creeps in through cracks you didn't even know existed. Some nights I'll be lying in bed, phone face down on my nightstand, and I'll feel it. That strange pressure in the air, like the silence is holding its breath, like someone is watching me through the screen of a camera I can't see. It happened again not long ago. It was around midnight. I was dozing off on the couch with a crappy sitcom playing in the background. Out of nowhere, my TV flickered. Just a split-second glitch, a hiccup in the feed. I sat up straight, fully awake now. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice, then over and over until it was vibrating so hard it nearly fell off the table. The screen was lit up with notifications, unknown numbers, random emails, subject lines like, "Still awake, Alex? Miss me? Smile." I froze, every muscle in my body locked up, and I just stared at the screen. One final notification popped up, an image attachment. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity, stupid, poisonous curiosity, got the better of me. It was a photo. My living room, the same angle as where I was sitting, same blanket, same glow from the TV. Someone had taken the photo seconds before I looked at my phone. I slammed my phone down and grabbed every device I owned, my phone, my laptop, even my smart speaker, and shoved them into a drawer. I yanked the router cable out of the wall and sat there in the dark, barely breathing. The thing is, it doesn't matter what I do. I can change my devices, change my routine, change my address. But he is still out there. I think about that warehouse sometimes, about the cameras, the mannequins, and the voice in the darkness that called me by my name. I wonder how many others have been pulled into their twisted game. How many have clicked the wrong link? How many have stumbled into the back room and never really left? I know this sounds like some cautionary internet tale, something you'd hear in a Reddit thread or some poorly made creepypasta, but I promise you, it's real. The dark web isn't just a place, it's an ecosystem. A living, breathing thing that doesn't care about you. It doesn't care if you're smart, cautious, or careful. If you step into its shadows, you become part of it. So if you ever find yourself on a forum that feels off, one where the air feels heavy and the words on the screen seem to stare back at you, close the tab. Walk away. Don't reply. Don't download anything. Don't get curious. Because curiosity isn't harmless. Curiosity is the bait, and the hook waiting on the other side. It doesn't let go. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to power down my laptop again. But if you've ever had a strange encounter online, if you've ever felt like someone was watching you through a screen, you're not alone. If you like these stories, please do like, subscribe, comment and share. Send your stories here. Email ytmanagerofnomi@gmail.com.